everyone. Welcome to this forum for candidates who are running for the member-at-large positions on the Fairfax County School Board. I'm Anu Sahai from the League of Women Voters of the Fairfax area, and I will be the moderator. We're pleased to partner with many nonpartisan and nonprofit organizations to sponsor this forum. The co-sponsors were listed on the screen. We appreciate the candidates taking the time to participate this evening, and we look forward to a lively and respectful exploration of the issues. And a thank you to the audience for attending the forum. This is American democracy at its best, giving voters an opportunity to explore the candidates' positions and points of view and make informed decisions when they vote. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for an opening statement. They will be speaking in the order in which they are listed on the ballot. Then they will have 1.5 minutes to answer each question and 1 minute for a closing statement in reverse order of their ballot listing. The timing will appear on the screen, and we will strictly follow the timing. So we'll begin with our opening statements, and we shall begin with Ms. Sandra Davis. Ms. Davis?
Hello, thank you for having me tonight, and I really love that you're willing to listen to everybody who's running for school board. I have 3 sons. They all went to Robinson High School, and my youngest one just recently graduated. And what happened was the reason I'm running is because when schools closed in March of 2020, it made sense. We didn't know a lot about the virus, and it was pretty frightening. But by that fall, parents were eager to hear about the return to school plan. And so we started watching school board meetings. We should have been watching them before, but we were always told that this was, a premier school system and this and that. We thought we would buy homes and retire here and everything would be really good. But what we noticed when we started watching the school board meetings is that all 12 school board members and the superintendent are from the same political party, and no group functions properly when there's no diversity of thought. So what we saw is instead of doing a return to school plan, they were working on things like the admissions process at TJ. They were working on electric school buses. They were working on renaming schools. And whether those things are important is debatable, but the kids were rotting at home and mental health was quickly going south. And when parents came to school board meetings and voiced those concerns, they felt ignored. So some of us, a bipartisan group, started a recall of some of the school board members. And during that time on the street, people from countries like China, Cuba, Venezuela would come up to us and say, do you know what's happening in the schools? And at that point in time, I didn't know what they were talking about. I just wanted my senior and other kids back in school. But when you combine the information I got organically from the street and watching the school board meetings, you realized that once you saw, you couldn't unsee it, that it wasn't functioning properly. So I'm a moderate person, and I'm actually an independent. I'm endorsed by both people and entities from both sides of the political spectrum. And I'm looking forward to lending a voice and making sure that everybody's heard and their concerns are addressed.
Next up, we have Ms. Aucoin, Ms. Cassandra Aucoin.
Yes, hi, how are you all this evening? I'm Cassandra Aucoin, and I am a longtime resident of Fairfax County. My family came here when I was a teenager because of the school system. I stayed here, graduated from a high school, and then went to college at Virginia Tech, got my degree in business, and then I went into work for public service for the federal government, where I worked over 35 years in the Department of Defense and the intelligence community, doing multiple business types of activities. I was the leader for a multi-billion-dollar budget. I was an HR director, and I've also managed big organizations and transformed them. I am a mother of two children who are also in the Fairfax County school system and a military spouse. And the reason that I am running is because I am a community member. I have been here a long time. I'm quite concerned of where Fairfax County Public Schools are going. We have an excellent school system, but I see a downward trend that's been occurring. And it's been going on, I think, for about the last 10 years with, academics going down. And as evidenced, actually yesterday, we got the SAT scores. In 2023, we have SOL scores that just recently went down. I'm running because I think our parents aren't having a voice in their child's education. And we have a budget that has risen to about $3.5 billion without much achievement and less enrollment. Politics, I've watched the school board. It seems like politics has really entered into the discussions. So I think we need to take a handle on our school system. I think it's vital that the FCPS gets back on track. And that's why I'm running, and I want to bring my leadership experience to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Linda Pellegrino. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much for having me and giving me this opportunity. My name's Linda Pellegrino, and I came here from Maryland back in 1984 due to a tragedy that occurred. And I raised my daughter as a single parent in the county. And I was quite aware back then and still today of all the various issues on school board and how it has evolved. The issues have evolved very dramatically in the last couple of years. I was part of the open FCPS because there were a lot of issues and a lot of it was because of the pandemic. There were issues, but there were also other issues. The fact that the school board is 100% one political party means there's not diversity of thought. There's not the openness to listen to the public. And I have noted that quite actively. I've spoken at school board meetings, and myself and many other parents, as well as taxpayers, speak to the current school board, and they all are in lockstep, and they don't listen to the taxpayers. They don't listen to the parents. And I served on the Community Action Advisory Board for 3 terms. And the purpose of that board is to help low-income and immigrant communities. And we would advise the Board of Supervisors on how to help children. What programs, like Head Start, for example, would assist the children to get a leg up in education. And so I care very much about the children.
Thank you. Sorry, time's up. Thank you so much.
Thank
Next,
you.
we have Mr. Moon.
Thank you so much for having us this evening. My name is Il Young Moon. I'm a candidate running for school board at large. I'm actually a former school board member with 20 years and 6 months of experience. I retired at the end of 2019, and I am trying to return back to the school board. And let me tell you why. Out of the current 12 school board members, only 4 are running for re-election. And those 4 school board members who are running for re-election only have a one-term experience. And looking back, what the school system has gone through during the pandemic, last 3.5 years, almost 4 years, that it's been difficult for everybody. Parents, students, and staff members and community, and the whole school system. And I think on the next board, with the kind of experience that I have, and also the unique perspectives that I bring to the work of the board as an immigrant who came to the U.S. back in 1974 at the age of 17 in the middle of high school years, one who grew up in extreme poverty and had to learn English as a second language. I was an ESL student when I first came. and also a first one to go to college from my family with undereducated parents. Neither of my parents had much education. In fact, my mother, unfortunately, when and where she was growing up, her parents didn't believe in educating women. So she only had a second grade education. But my parents believe in the value of education. They worked hard. I studied hard, became a lawyer, and eventually I decided to return back to the community for all the benefits of public education that I received in the US.
Thank you so much, Mr. Moon. Next, we have Mr. Ahmed Hussein. Mr. Hussein, the floor is yours. Mr. Hussein?
Yes, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear
Great,
you.
ladies and gentlemen, good evening. My name is, before I started my introduction, I would like to take this opportunity first to thank our League of Women for Fairfax, and especially Lynn, who has been coordinating this forum, and others that has been supporting. I would like also to thank this audience and my fellow candidates for joining us tonight. As has been said, my name is Mr. Hussein, Ahmed Hussein. I'm immigrant to this country. I'm a husband, a father of 4 children, and a grandfather. 2 of my children are currently in Fairfax County Public School, and I'm heavily involved in their education. I have been in the county more than 35 years and worked in the county Fairfax about 7 years before I joined the federal government and private sector. I'm experienced and accomplished leader in the both United States federal government, local government, as well as the private sector in different capacity in these areas. I have been also involved and engaged with the Boy Scouts of America, an active parent for 5 countries for at least last 8 years in support of my 2 sons who's currently in the Boy Scout in Annandale. I and I, 3 adults, traveled Philmont's Scott Ranch last year for 14 days to accompanying and hiking with my children, and as well as the other children that I helped with the parents. With the 2 children in Fairfax County Public School, I have an inherent interest the success of the county school board. However, my commitment goes well beyond my personal interests. I have been involved with several highly academic education
Thank
programs.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hussein. Next, we have Miss Maureen Brody. Ms. Brody, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having us. So I'm Maureen Brody and running at large for the Fairfax County School Board. I'm a lifelong resident here in Fairfax County, and I graduated from Madison High School, and I've raised 5 kids through the system. I became very active in 1993 with the school board, and Anthony Lane appointed me to an advisory council, a curriculum advisory council, where I began learning about how the school system works, how the school board works. And then I served in various volunteer capacities throughout the school system, including PTA president at Lee High School, which is now named Lewis, where we got our real, baptism by fire in working with, fighting a little bit against in this both the superintendent's offices and the school board with great success. I'm glad to say we had an excellent principal who stood with us, and the school board cooperated with us to really make some improvements at that school. But over the course of time, I've become aware of a lot of the problems and challenges that the school board is facing in terms of academic performance, mental health issues for our students, school safety, parent involvement, both positive and negative. So I see with a lot of clarity what the problems are, and I have a lot of corrections and solutions that I think are easy to implement, would improve the budget process, and I think would really make a lot of difference to give the kids a better shot at success in a global economy. So I'm very much looking forward. I pride myself in working with people from every political ideology, every background, as long as they're looking for excellence. I'm happy to work with them. So thank you very much.
And thank you. Next, we have Mr. Robert McDaniel. Mr. McDaniel, the floor is yours. Mr. McDaniel?
All right, sorry about that. I'm not a
No.
very tech savvy guy. Thank you so much. Thanks to the League of Women Voters for sponsoring this. I know every year it's one of the forums that I know a lot of people across the county look forward to. My name's Robert K. Kyle McDaniel. I'm one of your candidates for school board at large. And I'm a dad, I'm a pilot, I'm an entrepreneur, but I'm a 20-year resident of Fairfax County. And I think fundamentally this election boils down to a choice. It boils down to a choice of how we emerge from COVID. We've heard a lot of folks talk about the COVID pandemic. It fundamentally boils down to a choice of whether we're pro public education or not. It boils down to a choice of whether we roll back protections about LGBTQ kids or whether we stand firm with that community and we protect them from bullies. It boils down to a choice of whether or not we say that we're not going to have Florida-style book bans in FCPS, and instead we're going to take the opinion that book banning is a community decision, not an individual decision. So every election is about a choice, but this election in particular is about a very important choice. And that choice is whether or not we move forward out of COVID in a hopeful, optimistic, positive way. We address the challenges, certainly, but we are fundamentally pro-public education, we're pro-public schools, and we're pro-parents and teachers and kids. Or do we emerge from COVID in anger and cynicism and pessimism? I know my values. My values are democratic values. I think it's important that anybody running for this office is very upfront and transparent with their political values and the parties that they're running with. So you're going to see a lot of conversation over the next hour and 20 minutes, give or take, about that. But I'm happy to be here. I'm looking forward to your questions, and I'm looking forward to your support in this election. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Mr. Peter Gabor. Mr. Gabor, the floor is yours.
Good evening. Thank you very much to the League of Women Voters. My name is Peter Gabor, and I grew up in Portland, Oregon. For university, I went to MIT. I majored there in electrical engineering, math, and computer science. I've continued on to Princeton and got a doctorate in computer science and my teaching certifications in math, physics, and computer science. I worked at Microsoft for 5 years, then on Wall Street for 5 years, and I've been teaching in high school here at FCPS since 2010. I've taught math, but mostly I teach upper-level computer classes such as artificial intelligence and machine learning. My candidacy is different because I'm an active teacher. I have an intimate knowledge of the workings of FCPS, and I connect with my students every day and regularly with the parents. In this sense, I'm very well qualified to be a board member as I directly hear from many of the stakeholders at FCPS. The topic that concerns me most is teacher retention. There are two driving issues with the teacher shortage. The first is compensation and benefits. Even though teacher salaries have been going up, inflation has been going up even faster, so that comparatively speaking, teachers are doing worse than they were 10 years ago. This is already a difficult challenge. However, we've been making it worse by making the conditions for teachers increasingly less inviting, sometimes in ways that escape notice. We know class sizes have been getting larger. This leads to a real increase in the amount of time that teachers have to spend on grading. Flexible grading policies also increase this time. The many teacher trainings that are required also add up in time. We've also taken time away from their vacation by reducing summer break by 2 weeks, and this can cut into their summer earning potential. We've added to the duties by requiring them to lead sessions in SEL. As a board member, I'd like to ameliorate some of the difficulties that have been placed onto teachers, in addition to exploring how we can stably fund better salaries for teachers and support staff. As a current teacher, I'm well qualified to understand these things that may have been looked over.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Gabor. And finally, we have Mr. Ryan McKelvey. Mr. McKelvey, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Anu, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this important forum tonight. It's one of the few opportunities voters have to hear from us. So, like others here, I was born and raised in Fairfax County, went through our school system through Marshall High School, where I served as class president. After that, I went off to the University of Virginia to study anthropology and to Columbia University to study international affairs. Then, like most 25-year-olds, I decided to move home and run for school board. And so after that, I spent about 8 years on the board with Mr. Moon and others. And during that time, we made progress on many important issues. We worked toward healthier food, toward curriculum internationalization, toward gun violence prevention, more sustainable school system, and also civic engagement. In my day job, I work at the Brookings Institution, and I run a program in Fairfax County called Global Leaders of Fairfax County for high school students. I also serve as a Girl Scout troop leader and a PTA leader at my local elementary school. As others have said, our system has been through a few difficult years, and I view it as time to reset, renew, and rebuild. I think it's important to put a major focus on mental health, on retaining our educators, on creating safe and healthy environments, providing a 21st century curriculum, and also investing in pre-kindergarten. I'm in this for the long run. As I mentioned, I have two daughters, one of whom is in first grade at Churchill Road Elementary School. So I'm here for at least the next 18 years, and I want to make sure that we have the best school system possible, not only for my daughters, but for all of our children here in the county.
Thank you so much. That brings us to the end of the opening statements, and we will start our questions now. My first question will go to Ms. Davis. We're going to be asking you all the same question. So we'll start with Ms. Davis. Ms. Davis. Okay. Ms. Davis, here's the question. In 2014, FCPS worked with the community and stakeholders to develop and adopt its portrait of a graduate. This portrait prioritizes skills to help develop critical thinking, collaboration, global citizenship, and more. Given recent changes that have come to the SOLs, more inclusive teaching practices, changing technology, and more, do you believe FCPS's portrait of a graduate needs to be updated? If so, please explain how. You have a minute and a half.
Thank you. So the declines in SAT scores and other metrics started before the COVID shutdown. And as they keep mentioning, several of the people in this forum were actually on the school board at that time. So you have things like things that are affecting children daily, like the equity grading policies, that colleges are starting to realize that when our children get there, they're not prepared. We're 50th in reading for fourth graders, according to the nation's report card, and not much better for eighth graders in math. Now, the Fairfax County Comms Department will tell you that all those scores are rising. And if they are, it's because this is a very wealthy area. So people are supplementing their children's education with private tutoring, SAT prep, and during the pandemic, they had pods. I know that my son's school didn't have a computer science IB teacher, and he was trying to get into engineering at Virginia Tech. I had to pay for a private coding class. That's fine for people who can afford it, but there's a lot of children with parents or grandparents that can't help with that kind of thing. So what needs updated is our focus on children and actual learning of the basics. It's a little frightening right now.
Thank you. Thank you so much. The same question for you, Ms. Alcoin.
Yes, I'm going to say that we do need to do some updating on our methods. I think the portrait of the graduate is still pretty good in terms of, the basics, concepts. But what we need to do is look at what's happening with our academics. We have SOL scores that have gone down for our fourth and eighth graders in reading and writing and math. We have segments of our student population where the gaps between the minority students and our white children have not ever closed. And so we need to really look and focus on how are we going to get those skills to the children so they can actually fulfill the portrait of a graduate, like the reading and the writing and the math. The other thing we need to look at is where we're going in the 21st century in terms of the job skills. Vocation, schools, some of our students today are just not, they don't want to go to college. It's not for them. So we need to be looking at vocational training. For our special ed children, I think we need to be looking at vocational training earlier, because that is where, they're going to go into a vocation. So, and type in an apprenticeship. So there are definitely, I think in terms of the portrait of graduate and what you have, thank you, and what is put out there is fine. It's just our methodologies. Something is not working. We've been going down in our academic scores for some time now. We haven't closed our gaps. So we need to really focus, I think, on some of the methodologies that we're doing so that we can educate our children to be ready for the 21st century jobs that they want to take, or if they want to go to college. Thank you.
So much. Thank you. We seem to be having an issue with our timer. Hopefully we can fix it. The same question to you, Ms. Pellegrino. Do you need me to
Well,
repeat the question?
Wait, the timer is not going to
Yes,
start.
yeah. We're just going to
correctly.
fix it. I'm sorry about that. But we're timing it on the side too.
I just want to make sure that I have the same amount of time. Okay.
You will. We will. You
Okay.
can.
Okay. My name is Linda Pellegrino. As I said, I came to Virginia as a single parent. I raised my daughter alone. And one of the things in early childhood development that I learned when I was a double major, biology as well as music. So I have arts and science in me. One of the things that I think is critical is you have to start young. One of the things I did with my daughter was I started very young, singing to her, speaking to her, writing phonemes, letters. So early childhood development using phonics and having interaction between the parent listening to the child read is what was present in my daughter's school. And I found even then the public school system lacking. And so I supplemented by tutoring her myself. One of the other things I've done in my community is I have tutored ESL because I'm very good linguistically because I've sung in multiple languages performing opera. So I think we have to get the children interested in reading, understanding how to pronounce things, understanding vocabulary, and then adding math to that, which is critically important. And that's the basis when they're young. Each child develops differently in different ways. There's different kinds of learning. They learn
Thank you.
visually.
Thank you. Sorry.
I don't think I got the whole amount of time, but anyway, okay.
No, we did. It was the timer started after you started to speak.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. The same question for you, Mr. Moon. Do you need me to repeat it or?
I'm okay. I'm okay. I just want to see the clock.
The clock, okay.
Yeah, because it didn't look like it started for me, right?
Okay,
But
thank you.
No,
I'll go. You know,
maybe
my
Mr. Gabor can fix it. Okay, yeah, it started now.
okay, my service on the school board began about 3 decades ago, actually from July 1, 1995, and with a gap of one term for 4 years, it lasted until 2019. Over that, more than 25 years of period of time, that I've seen a lot of changes, especially among other things, the demographic of our student population. We, even though Fairfax County is one of the still wealthiest counties in the country, our poverty rate has grown significantly. In percentage of students who have to learn English as a second language has grown significantly, and there have been a lot of students who came to Fairfax County even without a basic education, even though they were teenagers. So those are affecting their student achievement. So we have a work to do. But as to the portrait of graduates, and by sons, they are now 35, 32 in fast job market situation. And they are learning. They have to learn to adapt to a fast changing job market. I think one thing I want to pound upon is developing better interpersonal skills.
Okay, thank you. That timer wasn't quite right, but if you need a few more seconds, Mr. Moon, or we're okay.
I'm okay.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. The same question for you, Mr. Hussain.
Yeah, good evening again. To answer your question, short answer, yes. I'm personally a strong believe that education is the foundation for our society. And when we're speaking about children, our children are our future leaders, and it's our responsibility to really to ensure that they receive the best education to prepare 21st century. How can we do that? I think we need to revise and relook at it, our curriculum. As many of them said prior me, uh, scores where you testify the education has not been showing what has been said by the current board. The SAT has been down in the Fairfax County for the last 5 years. 27 points SAT went down. Surrounding community, their SAT went up. And compared to the budget that we put into school, we are much, much higher. We spent $3.5 billion for our education system and the school board. And that does not show that the result coming up. So to answer in a short, yes, we need to look at it, our curriculum. We need to prepare our students for 21st century, whether it's designing the curriculum in the computer, adding more computer, artificial intelligence, and others, and math and science. We are short today, engineers and scientists and medicine compared to other nations. So our
Thank you.
country is seeking international students to come here to be educated.
Thank you, Mr. Hussain. Thank you so much. Ms. Brody, the same question for you now. Do you need me to repeat the question?
No, thanks. Top of mind. So there are five pillars in that portrait of a graduate, none of which happen to deal with factual knowledge or capabilities. And the few that do say capability of communicating and writing and reading were utter failures at these things. There is a very, very thin layer of successful people coming out of our schools and a very, very big layer of people who don't match any of the criteria that are on that portrait of a graduate. So I would say the less concern is remodeling the portrait of a graduate, except for maybe adding competence at, at what you've, cognitive learning. The better thing to do would be to reform the curriculum, reform the pedagogy. And by the way, if you notice on this POG, there's nothing in there for students with disabilities. There is no criteria whatsoever, as a kind of a visionary process for that. So I think that thing could be looked at again, but most of all, I think what we need to do is revise the entire system so that we are actually attacking each of those five pillars of the portrait of a graduate.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The same question for you now, Mr. McDaniel. Would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I'm fine. Thank you. Great question. Critical thinking, collaboration, global citizenship. Those are absolutely wonderful building blocks for a model student and a model citizen in this country. There's been a lot of talk in these responses about, we got to get back to basics. We got to go back to reading and writing and arithmetic. We have to go back. I don't believe in going back. I believe in going forward. I believe in looking forward to the future. And as a young parent, as a young family raising kids in Fairfax County, you know what the biggest discriminating factor is for the building blocks of an education? It's universal pre-K. And that's something that nobody as of right now has talked about. If we get universal pre-K in Fairfax County, we are going to be in a game-changing situation for our kids. And that's a top priority of mine. I know it's a top priority of Mr. Moon and Mr. McElveen. There's a couple other areas that I think we could focus on. Technology, we've talked about that. Foreign language, we've talked about that. An issue that's near and dear to my heart as a local business owner and an entrepreneur and an aviator and a pilot is expanding STEM, creating those alternative pathways that you don't actually have to go to college to be a successful adult. There are lots of other ways that you can go about doing that. So building out those types of pathways is another thing that we can do. And we can absolutely look at adding that to this portrait of a graduate. But we're not going backwards, folks. We're going to go forward and we're going to tackle our challenges with clarity and with steady leadership starting November 8th.
Thank you so much. Mr. Gabor, question for you. Do you need me to repeat it? Mr. Gabor? Mr. Gabor, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. No, I'll be all right. So a graduate is somebody who can enter society. And what does that mean, really? They have citizenship and they have the knowledge, the skill to perform some task which makes them useful to society. Are we training our students in the best way? In my view, the purview of the board is to prepare students to be productive members of society. That's what the graduate portrait is supposed to be, I think. So there's two aspects of this. First is citizenship. Are we training our students to be the kind of model citizen that we want them to be? And I'll offer a couple of things that we do that I don't think square quite right. So if you don't do something as a student, do you know what you get? You get 50%. And I would argue that in your working life, you don't get that. So you might be able to have one mess up, and then there's issues. Now, another thing is if you cheat, what should you get? Well, we give them 50%. I think that what we really need to do besides this is to focus on academics. We have to improve our scores, and I think the only way that we get there is if we devote the time for the students to learn the material.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And finally, the question is yours, Mr. McKelvey.
I would argue that the Portrait of a Graduate is one of the greatest achievements in the history of Fairfax County because it accurately reflects our priorities. I'm proud to have been on the board that created it. For those that don't know, it became a model for the state. The state adopted our Portrait of a Graduate, and many districts around the nation adopted it as well. It was a model of collaboration. We had a new superintendent at the time, Dr. Garza. We brought together 70 plus community members and a committee that helped craft this alongside the board. And it was really an extension of what we had previously had, which were the Student Achievement Goals, the SAGs, which were created in 2006. And what those showed was that FCPS is more than just academics. We hear a lot about going back to academics. Well, FCPS is more than that. It's about creating essential life skills, and it's about making sure our students have a responsibility to the community. And that those SAGs really set the stage to create the Portrait of a Graduate. Among the characteristics on the POG that I would hope we would embrace more would be one that I actually helped create, which was the ethical and global citizen point. I'm very proud for creating that, but we have not lived up to that. We have to do better at training our students in global languages and the skills of the future, as others have mentioned.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to the end of the first question, and we will be starting with Ms. Alcoyne with our second question. The second question is, the Virginia Department of Education, All in Virginia program provides intensive tutoring to return students to pre-pandemic SOL scores. This plan calls for various amounts of tutoring depending on the student's proficiency level. Tutoring will take place before, during, or after the school day. FCPS, like many school divisions in Virginia and across the country, is significantly impacted by a shortage of qualified teachers and struggles to adequately staff existing classrooms and summer programs. What can FCPS do to ensure that a tutoring program is fully staffed and accessible to all students? Ms. Alcoyne?
That's a great question. That is a great question, and I applaud the Virginia for giving the additional funds so that we can really get at the academic loss, the learning loss that occurred as a result of COVID. And I do understand and empathize with the fact that we do have a shortfall of teachers. So tutoring, I would look at some different ways. We probably need to start looking and talking to the retired teachers to see if we can get them to come back in and do some very diligent learning with the students. We're going to have to bring the parents into this, because without the parents' involvement, then we would, one of the problems you have with getting children to come in on the weekends or staying a little bit after school or doing a little summer school is you have to have parents who really want to engage and accept the fact that their children need to move forward. So some of the things we would do is maybe look at some teacher pay. Teacher retention is a big issue. We need to start looking at how we are paying our teachers and making sure they're market. And, this gets back to the way we do our budget right now. We have every year we provide additional money, millions of dollars to our now $3.5 billion budget. What does that do? It affects our taxes. It affects our real estate taxes. It affects the ability for our teachers even to be a part of our community where they work. So we've got a lot of factors into that teaching retention. But to tutoring, I'll end. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ms. Pellegrino?
Yes, excuse me. We do have a $3.5 billion budget, so we do have a lot of financial resources. And as it has already been said, it is a wealthy and educated county. So I think the funding can entice people to tutor, but I'm going to speak about my personal experience as a tutor to the immigrant community. I did it for free because I care about children. I care about people of all races, ethnic backgrounds, nationalities, and I have, I guess, a linguistic background because of my musical training. Singing in multiple languages. So I was able to understand in this language, they think this way, this means that. And I did it for free because I care about people. So maybe we can motivate volunteers, retired teachers, seniors, or people of multiple backgrounds that speak different languages that may want to step up and help the community. Because my point of view and my aspect is, even though I was a single parent, I was very active in my church community. I was very active in my communities that I lived in. So that's my perspective.
Thank you very much. Mr. Moon? Mr. Moon? You're muted, I think.
Mute. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you. It's quite interesting. You asked this important question today because right before I came to this forum this evening, I was at a board meeting of an organization called EduTutor Virginia. Because during the pandemic, after I retired, during the pandemic, I began volunteering for this brand new organization, which is trying to match, trying to encourage aspiring teachers. We're talking about college students, and match them with the students in Title I schools in local school districts, and provide them with very intensive high dosage tutoring so that those students could improve their achievement level. And so earlier today, with additional funding that is coming from state, we talked about exactly that. The biggest issue is, where are we going to find these tutors? The tutors who are able to provide the tutoring right away. I think we need to work more aggressively with the colleges around Washington metropolitan area. And also, since this can be done online, that we need to expand it to the rest of the Commonwealth or even the rest of the country to find provide college students an opportunity to earn some tuition money and also gain tutoring experience.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Hussain, the same question for you.
Great, excellent question. I think is one need to be the tutoring. For example, I can speak personal. My two boys go to the private tutoring, and we can afford to pay that. But not every single person in the county can do that. So to continue to do that and enhance that issue, I think what we need to do is we need to encounter and increase the communication between the teachers and the parents to foster that dialogue and then develop a curriculum only for tutoring purposes. We are surrounding environments, there are many university colleges around here. We can recruit the students who will become teachers and reward them for intensive, either they bear their tuitions or student loan forgiveness. And to do that, we also need to think about it, the red tape. If today I volunteer to tutor in a school in a subject that I'm familiar with, by the time background investigation, the red tape takes, we probably school finish. So we need to look at the policy and the procedure that in place to bring someone on board, and we need to develop a communication and MOU between the universities who currently providing a teacher certificate to allow us to come in after school and tutor, and then and facilitate communication between the parent and the teachers, and collectively between those three facets will become successful. The continent I was born, they call it takes a village raise a child.
Thank you very much. Ms. Brody, questions for you now?
Yes. Okay. So the governor recognized that more than half of our students in 3rd through 8th grade can't pass, are getting a failing grade on SOLs, which is an important recognition. My understanding of the All-In program is that it involves both volunteers as well as paid professionals. And I think that's an opportunity for the school system to start saying, hey, you know what? There are already people that exist, like Kumon and these other existing tutorial organizations that are out there. We can start tapping into our business community. These are planned to be before and after school. That's the suggestion of the All-In program, is before and after school tutoring of up to 18 weeks or 36 weeks for those who are have actually failed the SOLs. That money could be deployed to existing things rather than trying to figure out some clever way to import teachers and everything. No, these professionals already exist out there. Deploy the money to those organizations, and part of All-In is getting the transportation for the children and families who need it to their tutoring. There's a way that money could be spent intelligently as well. So I think we can look, instead of worrying about recruiting to an already depleted force, we can turn to experts that already exist.
Thank you. Mr. McDaniel, floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, let's talk about some facts. We have the money now for tutors. We could have used that money back in March, but the governor and Republicans in Richmond were busy playing games, and we didn't get that money in March. We got it in October for an election day issue. Back in March, they lost $200 million of education funding. JLARC, the nonpartisan study arm of the General Assembly, has come out with a report saying we are $3.5 billion statewide underfunded. Virginia is one of the lowest ranking states in the country in terms of education funding. These are facts. Another fact is they defund Fairfax County by nearly $500 million of education funding. So, this notion that, well, we just have plenty of money and plenty of resources. Yes, we have a $3.5 billion. That's because Fairfax taxpayers are paying for that because the state's not paying their fair share. 92.4% of that $3.5 billion budget is in schools, in classrooms, in staff going to teach our kids. Fundamentally, what this boils down to is the same problem that we have recruiting teachers. If a teacher steps a pinky toe out of line, they're going to be on Fox News, they're going to be in a newspaper, they're going to be on a blog, they're going to be on social media, and they're going to be attacked because that's the political environment in which teachers have to function right now. This boils down to getting back to the days, and this is the one time where I will actually agree in getting back to something, but getting back to the days where we actually respect teachers as the professionals that they are and supporting them, not pitting parents against teachers.
Thank you. Mr. Gabor.
Hi. So I think that for the tutoring issue specifically, it would make sense to use persons who are qualified but otherwise overlooked, such as retired teachers. I like that idea. And maybe even young persons who have recently graduated and are competent from university who are available and willing. But I think that this tutoring is a temporary blip but it is very closely linked. So it's a temporary blip because of the pandemic. That's the specific reason that they are having the tutoring. But the general problem exists and is staying with us and won't go away so readily. So how do we retain the teachers? I mentioned some of this in my introductory remarks, but I think this is relevant enough that I will continue. One thing is that when a teacher is ready to hire on, they come into FCPS, principal says, yes, please come in. Then they have to go to the HR and actually sign the contract. And oftentimes they don't. And I think it would make sense, a lot of sense, for the union to be sitting down with the teacher, because the union is supposed to represent them, and help the teacher navigate that process, because there are a lot of arcane things in there. So the point is to help the teachers be better, to save them time, and that'll help our retention.
Thank you. Mr. McKelvey, questions for you? Do you need
So
me to repeat it?
I think that FCPS has had both successes and failures when it comes to tutoring. So a success has been the recent effort to bring in those retired educators and others from our community through their program, which pays $48 an hour for tutors. So I encourage people that have extra time to take advantage of that. But there have been failures. Tutor.com was a failure. No one adopted and used Tutor.com. And I think that was unfortunately a waste of money for the system. And I think it shows that people prefer in-person opportunities as opposed to online opportunities. Mentorship programs, I think, are equally important. I'm a mentor through MentorWorks and FCPS and encourage other folks to get involved. That doesn't pay, but it's just as rewarding. And finally, I would say that our students historically have really been interested in tutoring their peers. I would argue there are hundreds of programs out there in our schools with homegrown by students, and we have to find a better way to funnel that student interest in tutoring into more centralized programs to get students where they need to be and where they can be the most useful. My father was a teacher that retired at the age of 82 during the pandemic from Kilmer Middle School. My wife is a teacher now. I certainly understand the struggles of our teachers and the need to restore respect to the profession. We have a lot to do, including improving compensation, improving building environments, working conditions, and reducing class sizes.
Thank you. And finally, questions for you, Ms. Davis?
Yes. So sitting around our county and crying about what Richmond is doing or isn't doing isn't going to help us. We have the resources here. As one said, tutor.com was just homework help. That was a band-aid and they wanted to move on back to what they wanted to talk about. Well, the problem didn't go away. One of the solutions would be to take some of the SEL time during the day and offer some direct tutoring on basic skills. Another thing would be to actually invite organizations like the Black Student Fund or Hispanics for STEM to be more involved in our school district. Another solution would be to take some of the bloated amounts of staff at Gatehouse and bring them down during the day to help rectify some of this lagging in knowledge that the children have. We cannot move forward if the children can't read. And we cannot move forward if we want to re-elect people who have already had their chance to try and fix some of this stuff. It doesn't make sense. So the superintendent often says that most jobs are not even imagined yet. Well, I assume they're still going to have to be able to read. And it's not Richmond's fault that these kids in our county are not reading. It's this school board's fault.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of the second question, and we will start with the third question, and we will be starting with Ms. Pellegrino first. Here's the question. Please share your familiarity with National PTA's 6 national standards for family school partnerships and how you will support their implementation as a school board member to strengthen family engagement practices across FCPS. I will read out the 6 standards. Welcome all families, communicate effectively, support student success, speak up for every child, share power, and collaborate with the community. Ms. Pellegrino?
Oh, wow, that's interesting. I have a very long list of community involvement, and a lot of it has to do with tutoring ESL in the minority communities, helping to feed people who are in need, being elected 3 terms to the Community Action Advisory Board, which advises and recommends to the Board of Supervisors spending priorities for people in need who are disadvantaged. So I have been very active in my community, and one of the things multiple studies have shown is that parental involvement with a child's education always increases the ability of that child to learn. And there are multiple studies that have shown and proven that. So I have been actively involved with the community, with my daughter's life, with my daughter's education from a young age. When she was 3 years old, I was tutoring her and teaching her before she even went to pre-K. So I think that is very foundational, that everyone, the community is important, but the family is a community in and of itself as well. And so the family unit must be whole and healthy for children to be able to have that nurturing and that learning that they need to do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Moon, question's yours.
Thank you. Thank you for the question, because that's one of the things that I want to work on when I get back to the school board, is to improve and strengthen the relationship between school system and the families. As someone from another country with parents with the language barriers, culture, and who have had to work really more than one full-time job. My mom had for many years 2 full-time jobs, and also on weekends. Many of these families, especially those immigrant families, second language families, they really do struggle in not being in helping their children at home. I think that there is where that we need to do a better job in being able to provide necessary information and knowledge to these families so that they can help their children better that are at home and outside the school. I've been talking with some of the staff members in the Office of Family Partnership within school system. They know there are a lot of things that they want to do. However, they are basically given more and more work to be done by same number of people with the same amount of time, so they are simply unable to do it. I think we need to provide them with more resources so that they can go to where those families are rather than waiting for them to come.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Hussain?
Great. Good evening again. For PTA and those 6 principles, I think I can agree with all of them. For myself, I have been helping the immigrant families as I was immigrating this country, between the Fairfax County school system and the parents who are immigrant who were not familiar with the system. You can imagine how many times that I sit down the weekends and understand the child and the parent, and then the next day I took off from my work and helped those parents. And for the last couple of years, my family and I are living overseas, international assignments from the U.S. government, and I participated those international schools that our foreign diplomats attended, those PTA schools. And for example, one of the countries that we were there and my children attending, there was 135 countries. And imagine that diversity, the challenge. So as a U.S. diplomat, when I was there, I was helping and facilitating understanding those cultures. And I will continue to do that whether I become the board member or not. And that's something that we need as a parent and as a school system, as a teacher, as a community, need to be all of us involved and take heart on it. Because if the child and the school system are not understanding and the parents are not aware, then we lost. So I think it takes between the parents, the school system, and also the community itself.
Thank you. Ms. Brody?
Yes, I would say that those are very nice objectives. We do welcome all families quite well in Fairfax County. That's about as far as it goes. We do not have the substantial resources needed for many of our immigrant families. They come and they're dumped into a system that's unfamiliar, and there is very little support for them. Some schools do a very good job, most do not, by my personal experience. The other things: communicate effectively, support student success, share power, what a joke, and collaborate with the community. These are all things that the current Fairfax County school system not only does poorly, but actively militates against. And that's one of the reasons I'm running. I believe that these things are very important: transparency toward the parents, collaborating with the community, integrating the business community into the schools, sharing power, boy, getting those parents involved. These are all really, really important things that are not done well right now, and I definitely would be an advocate for having them done better.
Thank you. Mr. McDaniel?
Thank you. It's a great question. I think this is a really good discriminating question against amongst all the candidates. I don't know how anybody can reasonably say that those principles aren't positive, or that we shouldn't promote those and target those. This is an opportunity to talk about a very important concept in this race and going into November, which is the concept of equity, the concept of one Fairfax, and not, capital One Fairfax is in the official policy, but working together as one community, as one Fairfax County. It's often said that in Fairfax, there's a so-called a tale of two counties, where we have those who have vast resources and who have means that we've talked about so far. We also have pockets of deep poverty, and we have pockets of people, whether they're immigrant communities, foreign language speaking communities, or whoever else it may be, that don't have those resources. And we have to have leaders on our school board fundamentally that recognize that and understand we can't just throw the same resources across every school and wipe our hands and walk away and call it a day. We have to target resources into schools through an equitable lens to address these deep pockets of needs that are in Fairfax County. If we don't do that, you can forget any metric bouncing back to any reasonable measure. Fundamentally, that's what this boils down to. And I think each candidate on this call, as they're answering questions, that's a question that you all at home have to really understand and have to ask yourself: which candidates are going to focus on helping those in our community with the most need, and which ones aren't?
Thank you. Mr. Gabor?
Hi, I'd like to see the parents involved in the education of their child. I'd like to see them active in the PTA, and I'd like to see them discussing the classes that the student is going to be taking and what they are taking. Also, parents should be very involved in helping the children learn how to make good executive level decisions. When I first came to FCPS, one of my administrators said, well, we want to have a minimum amount of parent involvement. That's what we think is good, because the students should be learning how to do this on their own. It's true that the students should be learning how to do this on their own, but when you have problems with some of the students, I have found that the parents have uniformly been appreciative of when I contact them and say, there's a problem and I need your help, and I need you to be involved with the student at a much greater level. And the parents always like this. The family unit is really important, and the parents never try to set the curriculum, but they always try to help with the student so that the student is doing the work that they are capable of. So I encourage this kind of involvement on the part of the parents.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. McKelvey?
So like others, I agree with the 6 standards, and I certainly believe in the importance of parental involvement in children's education. And as a new parent, I would say that I've seen the challenges that they face when coming into the school system, and I think that gives me a unique perspective as a school board member. I do come with PTA experience. I served as advocacy chair of the Churchill Road PTA. When working on issues like speed bumps, crosswalks, gardens, composting, things that really matter at the local level. And I see the importance of making sure that all of our schools have those same, are able to address those same issues. I believe this issue begins at birth. I think that we need to do a better job partnering with hospitals and making sure that we're getting new parents the resources they need as soon as their child comes into the world. We also need to focus on newcomer families. We've done a great job in the past creating newcomer academies so that our new students can learn English language much quicker within a base school environment. And I would say that these 6 standards point to the importance of every child, all families, and it shows the importance of working with both our schools that are haves and have-nots and making sure all have access to the same resources.
Thank you very much. Ms. Davis?
The sad truth is that the parents of 3rd graders and below don't feel welcome in the schools. Their children started school during a time when nobody was allowed in. So up until even recently, it wasn't this year because parents stepped in and complained. But last year, even the back to school nights were still Zoom. The parents don't realize they're allowed in the schools to help out. And I think a lot of the PTA money goes to the national organization. I hear a lot of people talking about preferring PTOs, actually. I go to the working sessions a lot of this current school board, and I would like to let people know that one of the things they talk about all the time is redistributing PTA funds from certain schools to others. And I don't know if they're planning on doing that or not, or if that will be something they can actually do. But this is the equity portion that Kyle mentioned. This is what it gets you. Now, I am certain that if you went to certain schools that have a certain amount of wealth and you ask them to redistribute their PTA funds, they're probably going to have a fundraiser. But if you go in and you force them to do it, that's not how things should work in America. That's not appropriate.
Thank you. Ms. Alcoin, questions for you now? Ms. Alcoin?
I apologize. Sorry.
No
worries. So one of the things we do need to do is we do need to get the parents back into the schools. I think there has been a period of time here where the parents have somewhat checked out, a lot of them. There are a lot of families who have come into our country, and their parents who are working, 2 jobs. And I'm sorry, I didn't know I didn't have my video on. Can you see me now?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, so we have a lot of families who've come into the country who, just to get started, their parents are working 2 jobs, so it's very difficult for them to engage. But we really need to find better ways of reaching out to them. The Family Liaison Program, I think, is a pretty good program. It might need to be expanded. They work with families, who are new and from different cultures. So I think we can, do some more work there. And, it's, back to, we just need to recognize that there are different cultures here, and we just have to put our best foot forward and put some money towards it. Back to, I think, one of the comments about equity, we have the One Fairfax policy. This has been in place for some time. We still haven't made it right in the few years that it's been it's been out there. So I think that we have to be thinking differently and more innovative in this area. So
thank you.
Thank you.
That brings us to the end of our 3rd question. And now we'll go on to the 4th. And we will be starting with Mr. Moon. And here's the question. FCPS Regulation 3009, updated in June 2023, details who has the standing to file challenges to library and instructional materials, as well as the processes and limitations involved in filing such challenges. Do you believe this regulation is sufficient? Please explain why or why not. Mr. Moon?
Thank you for the question, but I must admit that I'm not familiar with the due version of the Regulation 3009. But while I was serving on the board, prior to 2019, that we had always welcomed input from parents, whether it's a curriculum matters, or somebody's not happy with what the materials they are providing in the classroom as part of instruction, or whether it's a books in the library, etc. We provide an opportunities for parents to provide the input. There is a process, and everybody respected that process, where parents and educators all provide input for the school board to make ultimate decisions. And I think those process work very fine. I don't know how different the current process is, but if the current process does not really value and respect the parents, I want to go back to the process that used to exist when Mr. McKelvin and I used to serve on the board. And having said that, what we owe to all of our students and families are, we are doing our school board work for them, for their success, and for their student achievement. That is what I am going to focus on.
Thanks. Mr. Hussain?
Excellent question. I think this one need to be deal with nowadays. What's happening? That regulation, as long that regulation does not override the parent involvement and the parents working with the librarian to make sure, and also the professional who are aware and knows what the children need to be read or taught. So that parent engagement is very key issue, and also take a look at it in terms of the academia, curriculum, and also age appropriate, as long as the parents are aware what the children are being taught, are being reading, and also do not disrespect the professional that we hire to run our librarian and also our professional teachers who assign those books.
Thank you. Ms. Brody? Ms. Brody?
Sorry, thank you. I was muted. The yes, so 3009 is a pretty decent regulation that sets forth a pretty good process if you have a parent challenge. So the principals are asked to come up with a body of people who have volunteered to be on a board if there is a challenge. Those people are randomly selected. Now, oddly, when there was a challenge on the pornographic books that are in the schools, the board, the advisory board that was selected by the school board had nobody who disagreed, oddly. I mean, is that so random? Nobody who disagreed with having pornography in the schools. So I think there is some room for improvement where both sides of the issues, challengers and people who like the books, should be included. But the process itself is pretty reasonable, and I support it.
Thanks. Mr. McDaniel? Mr. McDaniel?
I'm here. Sorry, I was getting my
Oh,
thing here.
that's-
I would echo what Mr. Moon said. I generally agree with the process that has been described. The key takeaway is that we're not going to any future policy. If there are any discussions on that, I would not support allowing an individual, regardless of their affiliation with the school system. I would not support an individual having unilateral authority to walk into a school library and yank a book off a shelf and throw it into a banned state. I don't support that. As I said in my opening statement, banning a book is a community decision, not an individual decision, and it's not a decision that we do it to bog it down in an administrative red tape process. Meanwhile, kids don't have access to whatever that book may be. The key takeaway, and I agree with Mr. Hussain, it's got to be age appropriate. Parents obviously have a say in this process. And the fact of the matter is FCPS has a good process. When there is a question, a committee is formed. The committee has experts, and we respect those experts. It has teachers and librarians, it has administration, and it has parents. And they make a decision together. That's what I mean when I say this is a community decision, not an individual decision. So, yes, all day that regulation, as I've described, that's good for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gabor?
Hi, I have read through this regulation. The most recent one is version 12. It's had quite a checkered history, shall we say. Ultimately, I think that it's not the board's purview to be reviewing this material. The board has designated a way for materials to be reviewed, and there is a sampling of persons who, so anybody in Fairfax County, that's my understanding, can challenge material. And so they come in, they have to review the material completely, explain what their reason is, and then this goes in front of a committee where it includes staff, parents, I think sometimes students and admin, librarians. So the intention is to sample from a community so that they can decide together, does this serve the interests of the community to have the book there or not? So I think the process fundamentally is okay.
Thank you. Mr. McKelvey?
So I also believe that 3009 is sufficient, and overall I would just say that I support having literature that is representative and reflects our diverse community, and also I would support ensuring that our librarians' choices are respected. Parents have long had the opt-out option, and they can challenge books and make their voices heard. And the same is true with family life education. And I think that's an important option for all of our families. When I served on the board back in 2012, I served on a challenge materials committee when the book Beloved by Toni Morrison was being challenged. Then and ever since, I've rejected efforts to ban books. But I do think that families deserve the opportunity to raise their voices if they find content objectionable.
Thank you. Ms. Davis, floor is yours.
Yes, I support the process. And actually, for the last year and so many months on the campaign trail, when I'm under my tent, this is what question I'm asked most frequently by Democrats and Republicans. I'm glad that that policy exists and that there is a way for people to go in and raise concerns. I don't know anybody, so you have to start the conversation from the same point. I don't know anybody in Fairfax County, or I haven't talked to anybody who actually wants to ban literature. What parents are concerned about is the graphic novels that have infiltrated some of the school libraries, and those have images that are completely inappropriate, not age or developmentally. They're teaching kids how to use anal plugs. They're teaching and showing kids a dad on his hands and knees with a mother from behind with a strap on. I could show you what I'm talking about, but we're not even talking about the same thing. This is not a Florida book ban. These are graphic novels, and I'm down all the way to 7th graders. If you want to go buy this book at Barnes and Noble and give it to your children for Christmas, you're perfectly free to do so. But taxpayer funded books that are that extreme, and actually when I do show people what I'm talking about, Democrats and Republicans agree that it's not reasonable to have this kind of material in the library.
Thank you very much. Ms. Alcoin?
Yes, before I get started, can you actually see me? Because we were supposed to do this kind of, I'm being told that, my forehead's this and I'm all, can you see my whole face?
No, why we can't see your chin. Yeah, now we can. No, you can't.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
just-
good.
Nope.
Mm.
Now even less.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I quit laughing, Peter. Okay, well, this is, I guess, let me see if I can, so you could see it, right? Can you see it here? Can you see me
Almost.
now?
Almost. Thank you.
Right there?
Can you lower
You
it?
can only see up to your nose.
Or lower?
Yes.
You can
Okay, I'm gonna
stand.
stop right there.
That's fine.
Stand.
That's fine. Yeah.
Thank
That's
you. Okay, so let me just say this. I support the process of reviewing books. And this is actually another, as Sandra said, I get this question on the campaign trail quite a bit about being a book banner. I do not advocate for banning books. I advocate for books that are age appropriate. And when we talk about some of the books that we've been talking, like genderqueer, for example, comic book form, sexual acts actually being accomplished in the book. You know, those are not the types of books that I think are good for our children in schools. Now, if the parents want the book to be available to their child, they can do it at home. But we should not be using taxpayer payer funds for books in the library that are graphically sexual like that. And so where I think the board comes into play here is the policy is good. We have a robust, we've got 2 librarians, 2 teachers, 2 parents right now who review these books. But I do think we need to put a few guardrails up there, boundaries on what is applicable when we say a good book for the library. And I admire librarians. I mean, I think they know their job, but we do this at home. We don't allow our children to see certain things until it's age appropriate, or until they're, and some maybe never. So I do support the process. I want to continue to do that, and like to see it be more robust, actually. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Pellegrino?
Hi. Excuse me. I believe in community. I believe in participation from all parties. I believe that teachers, educators, and parents should all be involved. However, when parents are not being listened to, when the taxpayers are not being heard, because of some of these books being so graphic and age inappropriate, it's not helpful to the children. Okay. Legally speaking, parents are the guardians, legal guardians. They're responsible for their children. And I believe that the parents have the best interest of the children. And the children belong to the parents, not to the government. So, like I say, I believe in community involvement in multiple facets. But ultimately, I would never recommend banning anything that's academic, but anything that is age inappropriate and something that really tax dollars should not be spent on. I think that should be a choice of the parent. And earlier in the 1990s, the issue for FLE was opt out or opt in. Parental rights is something that I believe is important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we're going to do the last question, and I think we will still be running a little bit over time, but it's an important question. So I hope it's okay with you if we run a little bit over. And we will be beginning with Mr. Hussain. And here's the question. According to the 2022 Fairfax County Youth Survey, 38.5% of student respondents who identified themselves as non-binary and 35.4% of student respondents who identified their gender as other indicated that they had seriously considered attempting suicide in the last year. This is compared to 7.5% and 11.8% of their male and female peers, respectively. What can FCPS do as a system and as a school board to reduce this disproportionality? And we will be beginning, like I said, with Mr. Hussain.
Great, thank you very much. As a parent, it's concerned, and I'm sorry to hear that our children are going through that. So first of all, I think what school needs to do is to have appropriate, qualified, knowledge health psychiatrists who need to be involved and integrate with the system. If you see the current school right now exists, you might have or might not have some junior person who probably don't know anything about the psychology or psychiatrist level who take some courses but are not qualified to actually understand the challenge. It is the challenge that it's required between the parents, the community, and then also the educators. But if we separate the parents and the child who's going through that process, we will not get that. So what I will encourage is to do is dialogue between the parents, professional teachers who manage our child day to day, and find out how we can mentally support these children and find and provide resources to be able to effectively so they can overcome the challenges. I think is the really one need to be addressed the get-go when this board get elected. The current board ignored that, and unfortunately that's the people that we elected 4 years ago, and I hope we will not repeat the same mistake as the citizens to re-elect a board like that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ms. Brody?
Well, I would say the numbers are really speaking for themselves. The trajectory, the exponential increase in students who think that they are in the wrong body is really indicative of a social contagion that is part of what's going on social media, part of what's going on in commercialization of the profiteering industry on gender. You know, they make a lot of money on gender affirmation and gender transformation. The schools have bought into that, and it's this kind of underlying thing where they are asking what's your preferred pronoun and everything. It's all an overall endorsement by the school system of something that is a tragedy for these kids. The suicide rate does not go down in the transgender community once they're adults. The suicide is incidence is way higher in the transgender community for adults than it is for non-transgender people. So I think the first step is the school's got to stop endorsing this social contagion. The second is they've got to give parents full transparency into what's going on with their children. There's nobody who loves a child more than their parents. Then parents have the authority over it. So that transparency has to be there. And then third, we've got to have mental health professionals who are accessible to the parents if they do want some access through the schools.
Thank you very much. Mr. McDaniel? Mr. McDaniel?
Yeah, thank you. Great question. You know, the claim that LGBTQ kids are a contagion or something like that is patently ridiculous. And the statistics that you said speak to the issue. These are facts, and I like data and I like facts. I operate in that world. Kids that are in these situations are statistically significantly more likely to have suicidal ideations. And that is a fundamental problem that the school system has to address, because those ideations don't disappear during the school day. They are still there. This means that we have to hire more counselors. I mean, we've talked about you know, having resource challenges. We have a resource challenge when it comes to hiring more mental health counselors. Similar to the tutors, the challenge is also not just having the money, but it's finding the personnel that can do that. Medical professionals say that the best way to deal with these situations is to respect and to affirm and to partner. Respect, affirm, and partner. And that's the policy that I believe in. Now, you're probably going to hear that FCPS is hiding things from parents. That's completely false. That's a political talking point that got into the lexicon over the last couple of years. The fact of the matter is that kids in these situations, when they go to a school counselor, the first question that counselor says is, do mom and dad know? I would hazard a guess that 99% of the time, the answer is yes, the schools partner with parents. In the off chance that that is not the case, the schools will work together with the child to get mom and dad involved. And that's the key.
Thank you very much. Mr. Gabor?
Those numbers are very interesting. When I'm shown statistics, I normally want to see a lot more of them before I can respond very well. The numbers are quite skewed, so I'm inclined to think that there is something there. Here's my reaction to this. I think it's a very confusing time for students, for children. They are given so many choices, much more than they used to have in the past. They're essentially told, choose. Here are your choices. And oftentimes the students don't know what to choose. So they make a choice, and that choice can take them into different places. I'll give a simple, for example, I sponsored the ballroom dance group at the high school. And in the very old days, before I was ever sponsoring anything, it was very clear who the leaders and the followers were. Now you come in and the students tell the other students, okay, pick, do you want to be a leader or a follower? Students look at each other and they don't know. And this can be very difficult for the student. That's a very simple example. So I think we have to be very careful how we go about this. I definitely support the parents being involved. I think that's very useful. They're responsible for the children after all. And I also think that this school should not be affirming what the student is saying. They can ask and explore what is happening, but I think that's judgmental if they start to affirm.
Thank you. Mr. McKelvey, it's your turn.
So in 2015, I was proud to be the board member that sponsored the effort to add gender identity to our non-discrimination policy. For the first time in history, with that, Fairfax County protected in word and in deed our LGBTQ students and staff. And I would say that since then, we have not had any issues with that policy. The youth study that you refer to really shows some scary trends. Statistics nationally show that about half of all transgender youth have attempted suicide. And I think it's important that we draw from other sources when we look at this data, like the Trevor Project's national survey, which really points to the need for increased social supports for those students. So in terms of next steps and what we need to do, we need to continue hiring additional mental health professionals in our system. We did a lot when Mr. Moon and I were on the board. We hired an extensive amount of professionals toward the end of our last term, but more needs to be done there. And then I would add that we need professionals who are really focused on the unique needs of the LGBTQ community, and that's something that doesn't currently exist.
Thank you. Ms. Davis?
Some people are advocating for partnering, but they're forgetting to partner with the parent. FCPS can, will, and has hid this from parents if it occurs. It happened to a friend of mine where her child socially transitioned at school and she didn't find out for a year. And I was there to help her pick up the pieces from that. Her child ended up in a mental health facility. I had to drive her other child to practice. This does happen. And there is no parent that says, I want the school system to keep secrets from me. That doesn't exist. And you'll hear people say, well, if your kid didn't tell you, then you must not be parent. Everybody knows that as soon as you say my kid will never, there they go nevering like they've nevered before. What's not fair about this situation is a child can go in and assert something and get a care plan and professional help. When children with something that is diagnosed like dyslexia can't get services, they can't get what they need to learn how to read. And why is one condition elevated over another? Why do you include parents in IEP plans for reading problems, but you're not going to include them in this situation? It doesn't make sense, and it's not fair. And if they are suicidal, the parents need to be involved even more.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ms. Alcoin?
Yes, and can you see me?
Yes.
All right, good. Okay, thank you. So the statistics that were mentioned earlier, they're very troubling. And I know, children have a tough time in high school, starting in junior high school. It's a tough and challenging time. It's awkward. There's lots of things that go on in their head. And I think some of the things that affect their ability today is they are so bombarded with social media. They are also, many of them are not quite there with their reading and their math, and it's tough for them. So it's challenging. I think it's very important that the parents are involved in any sort of discussion on gender dysphoria. And this is why, I heard what I think it was Mr. McDaniel said, that, parents are involved. The stories I am hearing, they are not involved. And so, and if they were truly involved, it doesn't make sense to me why the 2023 model policy was rejected by our superintendent and our school board. That made it very clear. That was, I thought, a very win-win. You bring the parents into the discussion and the decision-making when it comes to gender dysphoria. And so I think we need to have the parents involved, because if they're involved in, I think, suicidal thoughts, there's acceptance, suicidal thoughts will be much less. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Pellegrino?
Excuse me. I agree that in many ways, adolescents and children, because I remember my days in high school, even though I was a cheerleader and a gymnast, I still was a very emotionally vulnerable person. And believe it or not, back then I was very quiet, but I could get out on the floor and perform. So emotionally, with the hormones coming into their body and they're not used to it, it is a traumatic time for children in general. So if they have gender dysphoria and they're confused as to what they are or what they want to be, I do think that guidance counselors can assist, but parental involvement is absolutely necessary. Those children belong to the parents. Those parents love their children. And I have heard it quoted that we need to make sure that the parents don't find out, because that they may harm the child. What parent would want to harm their child unless a parent has some mental problems themselves? And that does happen. I'm not saying it doesn't, but in general, parents love their children and they are the legal guardians of their children, and they love and want to protect them, and they can partner with the guidance counselors in the school system.
Thank you very much. Mr. Moon?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. We need to always work with the parents. Parents have a right to be involved, and we should involve them. Having said that, just as Ms. Pellegrino stated, that there may be parents who have mental problems. If we know that a revealing certain situation to a parent would endanger safety and life of a student, I think the school system owes a duty to protect students as well. And I'm hoping that we can always involve parents and hide nothing from parents. Having said that, our foremost duty goes to providing welcoming and comfortable learning environments for all students, no matter who they are. We can never deny that we have LGBTQ students and staff in the school system. That is why back in 2015, as Mr. Ryan McAfee mentioned, that when he brought up the motion, I seconded the motion to include gender identity in our non-discrimination policy. And I was the one who made a motion to include sexual orientation just a year before in 2014. I haven't heard anything bad coming out of those policies.
Thank you very much. And unfortunately, we don't have time for more questions. We had a whole list here, but that's all we could get to. And we will be doing our closing statements, and we will be beginning with Mr. McKelvey. And you have 1 minute.
Well, thank you again to the League of Women Voters for this conversation tonight. As I began tonight, I talked about emerging from the pandemic. And as a county, this is a time where we need to reset, reorient, and renew. At a time when, as we can see from discussion tonight, education is very much under attack, I want to work toward a better tomorrow that embraces things like gun violence prevention, universal pre-K, free and healthy meals for every student, solar panels on every school. I'm ready to take on these challenges. I'm an experienced voice at the table, and I want to work with the community to bring back the joy to education that's been missing. I see it in the eyes of my daughters and all of our students that our best days are still ahead of us. And I would just leave you with the point that experience matters, empathy matters, and I hope to earn your support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Gabor, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. Thank you very much for putting this on. I appreciate the chance to be here. I'm an on-the-ground teacher interacting with students, parents, teachers, and administrators on a daily basis. I'm definitely for parent involvement. I think it's always good when the student and the parent and the teacher are interacting. My view of the Education Board is that their purview is to prepare future contributing members of society. And that means preparing for citizenship and also preparing for the skills necessary to enter the workforce. My primary focuses on the board would be teacher recruitment and retention. This is a vital area to address in a sustainable way. And secondly, the improvement of our test scores. I think that we should get back the nice test scores that we've had in the past, and I think that means going back to basics and allocating sufficient time to do so.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. McDaniel, you have 1 minute.
Thanks so much, and thank you, League of Women Voters, for having us tonight. Guys, as I said, this election is about a choice. Do we go backwards? Do we go forwards? Do we roll back protections on LGBTQ kids, or do we stand firm and protect them? Do we partner with parents, or do we pit parents against teachers? Do we pit the community against the school system? Fundamentally, on November 7th, the voters of Fairfax County are going to have to choose whether we have a school board that is pro-public education, that champions our schools, that works with parents and teachers and kids to create a world-class school system where every child, regardless of zip code or whatever side of the road they happen to live on, has access to a high-quality education in a safe and welcoming environment. That's the spirit of Fairfax County. That's our Fairfax values. And those are the values that I will uphold on our school board come January 1st when this new board takes office. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Brody, you have 1 minute.
Thanks for having us. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm super excited. I've donated a lot of my life to the school system. I've been a teacher from pre-K all the way through undergraduate college. And I can clearly see a lot of the problems and clearly see a lot of the solutions. I think they're very doable with immediate results and long-lasting results. I'm very excited to work with anybody out there who is in pursuit of excellence for our students, safety for our schools, and professional respect for our teachers. So I'm ready to get the job done. I've been studying and studying, so I'm hoping that people like what they hear and that'll earn their vote. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Mr. Hussein?
Great.
1 minute.
First of all, League of Women Voters, thank you very much for hosting us tonight. I appreciate it. You heard all of us. January 1st, when we get elected, I am going to work tirelessly to improve our education system by advocating for policy that prioritize accountability, transparency, and excellency. I believe every child deserves access to high quality education regardless of the background, income, and location. I will advocate policy that empower parents with more rights in the decision-making process of the public school system to increase transparent communication between parent and school administrations to ensure that parents are aware what our children are being taught or being assigned. With that, I'm looking for your vote. Thank you very much. And I want to provide the country who allow me to be part of it, to put back to the community who allow me to raise my children and also to welcome me when I arrive here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Moon? You have 1 minute, Mr. Moon?
Yeah, thank you for having us this evening again. Other than, defined by parents' wish that I should go to MIT, just like Mr. Gabor did, I chose to go to Harvard over MIT. And instead of becoming an engineer or computer scientist, I chose to major in East Asian studies thought that I was going to become a diplomat, but ended up becoming a lawyer. That I had been a good son to my parents, and I've been trying to be a role model for my own two kids who grew up in Fairfax, went to Fairfax County Public Schools. And I've been always teaching my kids, even as an immigrant, even as a minority, you need to step up and work to build the community, to build a better community. That's what I want to do on the next board, providing my 20 years of experience and leadership, my legal and analytical skills to work with the other 11 school board members.
Thank you very much. Ms. Pellegrino, you have 1 minute.
Yes, well, my 3 points that I believe very strongly in is strong academic excellence. I believe that the academic excellence needs to be done involving parents as well as sensitivity to the different ethnic minorities in this county, because we are a very diverse county. And one of the things that I think is very important is language immersion, and it provides language skills and for them to be prepared for the future, for success. We need to have safe schools, and we need to have teachers and guidance counselors that are aware of any possible violence or bullying. I think that is wrong. And I believe we need accountability to the taxpayer. Thank you for having me. And I'm asking for your vote.
Thank you very much. Ms. O'Coin? Ms. O'Coin, you have 1 minute.
Yes, right there. Okay. Can you see me now? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for having me tonight. I was very good questions. I want to address one comment that has been made a couple times about public education and the attack on public education. I am not attacking public education. It is vital to our society. We just need to make it work. We need to make it work better. Fairfax County is the second wealthiest county in Virginia. There's no reason in this world that we cannot have our academic excellence come back, restore standards, raise our scores. We've spent many years in this business, and we've put a lot of money into the program. So we can restore academic excellence. We need to rebuild our partnerships with our parents and our teachers. And we also, something that was just touched on, we need to bring accountability back. We need to restore accountability to the taxpayers, because that's where we get most of our funds for the school. I have experience in multi-billion-dollar budgeting. I can help you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Davis, you have 1 minute.
Thank you for this forum tonight. I'm actually running to save public education. And what doesn't feel safe in this school system is to dare to have a different opinion. And it's not welcoming when people who are conservative aren't even allowed to voice those things without the other side saying they're being attacked. We're not that fragile. So like I mentioned, all 12 of the current school board is already one political party. I'm just asking for a regression towards the mean, back to some more moderation and stuff we can all agree on. And I wanted to let people know that we are disappointing the immigrants. We're disappointing the immigrants. I talk to them every day. And something that surprised me is running for at-large, being in all parts of this county, to fall in love with Fairfax County. Each area has its own vibe. And it's been a real pleasure to do this journey to run for office for school board. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That brings us to the end of our closing statements and to the end of our debate. I would like to thank everybody who participated tonight, and to our audience for being here. We would like to invite you to visit 411 .org to see additional information. You can also check out all of the voter registration and election information on our website as well. If you see the QR codes on your screen, you can just use your phone and learn more. Just focus on the QR code. Once again, thank you to everybody for attending this forum. Voting has already begun, so please encourage everybody in your family who is eligible to vote to go out and vote. Thank you and good night.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Thank you.